Hi, I'm Lindsay Smith, welcoming you to Raise the Line with Osmosis from Elsevier, where we explore ways to improve health and healthcare. Today we have an especially inspiring episode featuring Kyle Pease and his brother Brent, who recently competed in the Ironman World Championship in Hawaii, a challenge they also took on together in 2018. For those unfamiliar, an Ironman is a 140.6-mile endurance event combining swimming, biking, and running. What makes their story even more extraordinary is that Kyle, born with cerebral palsy and spastic quadriplegia, completes these races with Brent's assistance, making them the first push-assist brother duo to finish the grueling Ironman World Championship in Kona. With over 125 races under his belt, Kyle has become a leading disability advocate, demonstrating resilience and breaking barriers through sports. Brent, meanwhile, is the executive director of the Kyle Pease Foundation, an organization they co-founded to promote inclusion in sports and the workforce. His book, Beyond the Finish, and his work as a multi-sport coach further amplify their message of hope, resilience, and empowerment. Their latest Ironman journey is raising funds for the Foundation's Inclusive Employment Program, a cause close to their hearts as they champion a world that is more inclusive for individuals with disabilities. I'm excited to dive deeper into their remarkable journey and the impactful work their foundation is doing. We're thrilled to welcome both Kyle and Brent to our You're the Zebra series, a conversation series dedicated to raising awareness about rare diseases. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Can you both introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves? Let's start with Kyle and then go to Brent.
I'm Kyle Pease. I have cerebral palsy. I'm a brother, a son. I'm a six-time Ironman, and I love to race with my brother. I'm also the co-founder of the Kyle Pease Foundation.
I'm Brent Pease, co-founder of the Kyle Pease Foundation, executive director of the Kyle Pease Foundation, and Kyle's brother.
Thank you so much for introducing yourselves. And you mentioned right there the foundation. Can we start there? And can you tell us a little bit about the purpose of the foundation and the wonderful work that your group is doing?
Yeah, so the mission of the Kyle Pease Foundation is to improve the lives of people with disabilities through sports and beyond. And so we started in 2011 with a mission rooted in sports of just getting people with disabilities included in sports. And what it's really grown to is where we say and beyond is just helping these athletes move beyond the finish that, you know, the first 5K or the first marathon or Ironman that they do is really just the beginning of that journey. And we've developed an inclusive employment program in the last 6 years. And we're looking at different ways that we can foster just inclusion everywhere for everybody living with a disability.
And I think the inclusivity piece is so important here. And I hope we continue to kind of make great progress towards that as a world in general. I want to talk a little bit about you guys competing in the sport of triathlon, and congratulations on your recent accomplishment as, I think, a 2-time Ironman. Is that correct?
Kyle's done 6 Ironmans now, but 2 Ironman World Championships, which is kind of the big deal of the whole thing, of the whole shooting match. So yeah, we've been doing Ironmans since 2013 together.
And why did you decide to get into the sport of triathlon and kind of this endurance racing?
It really reminded me of my life. I go through many ups and downs throughout my day. And just like in the sport, you go through a lot of different challenges throughout the competition, and just focusing on the idea that anything is truly possible. And after I saw Fred compete, and the first Ironman, I've always wanted to be an athlete, and to get to do it with Fred is the best part. And so I asked shortly after his first Ironman, it toy tank could be for a wheelchair to Ironman. And from there, that's how this journey started and has evolved to today.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it's amazing to see how these races have become a shared journey for you both. I'm sure our audience is very interested on how this all works and how you're able to compete at the highest level of triathlon, what equipment strategies make this all possible. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, inclusion was always the name of the game. And so the equipment kind of had to meet those standards. There's a lot of people in this space in the triathlon world. For any of the listeners that might remember the father-son, Rick and Dick Hoyt, when they were doing it in the late 80s, they were kind of it. There was nobody doing anything like that. But if you look at a lot of the people doing what we do, like the bike, they're towing them. The run is like these big bulky chairs, and the boats are just kind of these built for comfort. And our idea was that Kyle had to be included. He had to be part of the experience. He had to feel like a cyclist, and he had to be an athlete too. And so we found an inflatable kayak that satisfied that need, that I tied that to my waist. So it's a lightweight kayak that helps Kyle sit upright, allows him to kind of captain the boat, captain the race from an upright seated position versus laying down. The bike, Kyle sits on the front. I think there's lighter options. The towing would potentially be a little bit easier. But for us, that didn't make us feel like Kyle was a cyclist. So it's a specially made bike out of Canada from a company called Freedom Concepts, 3 wheels to help with the stability for Kyle's disability and transitions. And then the run is a specially designed run chair where I push Kyle. But all of those allow him to feel like an athlete, to be included in the race, to not just be a passenger, and to be every bit the athlete that I'm being through 140.6 miles together.
Yeah. And for our listeners, 140.6 miles in all 3 sports there. So doing swim, bike, run in that order. And so the level of fitness that you have to be in to not only compete in Ironman, but then to additionally, help pull someone as well is the highest of levels.
For both of us, we did a training ride this summer where we were in Atlanta, Georgia. So we went from the beginning of the Silver Comet Trail, which is in Cobb County, all the way to Anniston, Alabama. And Kyle had to do the whole ride. It was 95 miles. And then we got to the end and I made him turn around and do 2.5 out and 2.5 back for a nice even 100. Because his mind and body have to be ready for this too. And so what's really interesting to me is, yes, I have to carry a very high level of fitness. I have to carry another human being for 14, 15 hours. But when you look at Kyle's progression as an athlete, when you see how he looks every bit the part of an athlete, when he puts on those Oakleys, he's prepared his mind and body for the day too. And Kyle mentioned it's like his life. Ironman is, if you physically prepare, it's much more about what you can endure mentally. And that's why Kyle is such a skilled Ironman triathlete, because his life has taught him how to endure physical and mental challenges from a much earlier age than many of us experience.
Absolutely. And I think Ironman is the ultimate challenge for sure. I know you guys have talked about your team behind you, kind of your village, and I've heard you guys refer to them as your secret weapon in the past. Can you speak a little bit about your team and your support system that has helped you accomplish these incredible feats like the Ironman?
Yeah, with our parents who have been amazing, who have taught us to never say no for an answer, to always work at your possible rather than what you can't do. And then it goes to Brett's wife, who is probably the biggest secret weapon we have. And then it goes, my niece and nephew, Brett's daughter and son. And then from there, it works making it through the village.
We have dozens of volunteers that come to these Ironmans. We have operations manager, bike mechanic, all of these people that make the whole thing go, that are in transition with us, that make sure the equipment works. And we think through all of these decisions. Our bike is not the most aerodynamic bike, but our mechanic determined that aerodynamics at the expense of Kyle's ability to get through the race in comfort, so all of these decisions have been painfully scrutinized by the entire team. And so, there's a picture I can find where we're coming up to the bike turnaround in Hawaii, which is around mile 60. And there's 20 or 25 people waiting for us, cheering for us. Every single one of them played a role in our success that day. So we'd love to tell you that we do these things in a vacuum and we're amazing humans and we can do it, but we're really nothing without that team.
And I did the team, especially in Hawaii, a couple weeks ago, really executed their plan because they were all over the court. So we would see 2 or 3, and then we would go 10 more miles, then we would see the next group. So it was truly amazing to feel their love and their energy on the course.
Absolutely. And you guys have an incredible village behind you supporting you both. Can you talk a little bit about some of the highlights and some of the competitions that you guys have done together?
Yeah, we have done over 80 races together. It might be more than that now. But the Ironman really speaks to us. So we have done 6 of those. We have also done the New York Marathon twice, the Boston Marathon once, and get to really try to elevate our story through the Kyle Pease Foundation. So the foundation does about 40 events a year. Most of them are at the local level. But we do take athletes out of town that did need to do the race weekend, and then we have also done the Marine Corps Marathon with KPF.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those highlights. And as you were talking about all the races that you've done, all the work that you're doing with your foundation, I wanted to know how you manage it all between the training, the foundation, being maybe even a multi-sport coach as well. You have a family. How do you guys manage it all?
I would say that we don't. I mean, but that's the beauty of the secret weapon, is that there's just so much support that, the Kyle mentioned it at the beginning, but the parallels from Ironman to life, there's so many. And, Ironman is this process that takes months and sometimes years to get ready for. And then you hit the finish line and you think it's going to be this like watershed moment of like, okay, all the struggles are done. But it's like, no, that just taught me how to deal with the next wave. But it also, for us, from a professional standpoint, it creates a wave of success. It creates the opportunity for more podcasts, more speaking engagement, more opportunities to amplify what we do from a professional standpoint. And so we know that there's times where I may not be able to stuff envelopes. Josh with our team is here helping us do that today. I know there's times that I may need somebody to help monitor emails, or maybe a friend to help with my wife and kids to run around while Kyle and I are biking to Alabama. And that's probably another way that secret weapon has helped us, is that Ironman forces you to do a lot. And that can sometimes come at the expense of the available time that we both have. But to know that everybody supports that because of what it does for us professionally and personally on the back end is something that we're extremely grateful to have those opportunities and support for.
And I know you mentioned some speaking engagements there. So can you give us some highlights of some of the speaking opportunities that you guys have had? And, you've talked a little bit about the message that you're delivering on inclusivity, but what other messages are you delivering in these speaking engagements?
So we do all sorts of stuff. I mean, we were at a real estate investor conference last night. We do sales meetings. We do education, everything that you can imagine. I mean, we don't have a sweet spot. Every group is a very viable group for us, because when we first started as speakers, Kyle and I would just get up there and say, I'm Brent and I pushed my brother, and Kyle would say, and it was hard for me. And then everybody would stand up and clap. And what we realized is that was just like doing an Ironman by ourselves, that it was just like this fleeting moment that was great that ended. And we really wanted people to be able to take something from it. So one of the things we really focus on is helping people find their finish. What does your finish line look like? Because that finish line of Ironman is what opens up all these opportunities, as we just mentioned. And so we want to encourage people to figure out what their finish line looks like. Is it a professional? Is it a personal? What are the things you work for and how do you get there? And we use the real examples of what we've been through. I mean, one of our famous examples that we love to talk about is in an Ironman event where we could barely move. We were so tired. I had been getting sick, and all we could focus on was these little traffic cones that were about 5 feet apart. And we tell this story, and they're listening to how Kyle is coaching me from 5 feet at a time. And when you see the finish line photo, you think, wow, what amazing athletes. But it's the tip of the iceberg picture, right? What you don't see is what's below the surface, how much work went into that. And so we really like to focus in on that, to let people know, like, hey, we've struggled. We know you're struggling. We get through this together. How do you get through it? Who is your team? Who is your secret weapon? And what does that finish line look like to you? Because what we hope is that it's not just this 60-minute keynote address that's uplifting and inspiring, but rather it's this watershed moment for you to say, my possible is so much more than this moment.
And I love what you said right there of what does your finish line look like to you? And I think there's so many of these life lessons that you can pull from Ironman and what you guys are doing and apply it to everyone's everyday life. I want to provide some additional information for our listeners. If they want to find more about the foundation and the incredible work that your team is doing, where should we direct them to?
Yeah, click on the best way to get directed to the website. KylePeaseFoundation.org. There are many ways on the website that will help you listeners get involved, to learn more about our programming as well as our social media. And that's the best way, I guess, to get more eyes on the foundation.
Absolutely. So for our listeners, you can visit the KylePeaseFoundation.org for additional information. So as you both might be aware, Osmosis is an educational platform, and we have many students and early career health professionals in our audience. And I wanted to ask your guys' advice for them about meeting the challenges that they face in their own lives and how they should approach providing care for patients with some of these more rare conditions.
Kyle's going to give a much more technical answer, but I'm going to lead him because I want to give him a line that he likes to use in our speeches that I think applies to your question. And one of the things Kyle will say in our talks is he said, we all face obstacles, but do you allow those obstacles to define you, or do you define them? And what Kyle's really trying to help them focus on is that, hey, we all go through something. Kyle's struggles are very visible. He sits in a wheelchair, but I might be going through something too as a brother living with a sibling with a disability, or just my own personal struggles. And so I just love the way Kyle frames that, because then as you start to think about it, you start to kind of separate yourself from just you, and you start to think about the greater community that you may be serving or that you're existing in. So I don't know if that led you good or not.
Yeah, I think that every patient needs to be treated with respect, and that if they have a disability, that to make sure that they are being taught to as individuals and not as their caregivers. But like Fred says, tackle every challenge head on, and don't sidestep anything. And be curious. I think that's what we would be wanting. Always be curious about what you're learning. If we need to, are you here as well?
Thank you so much for sharing all of that advice for our listeners. I really liked the be curious part in particular. I think that's a great lesson for everyone. For my final question, what is next for you both?
Well, we're going back to Boston, and we're going to do the Boston Marathon together. But then we're going to focus on the foundation and really focus on every athlete and invest in their well-being and help them see their next finish line and beyond.
It's interesting. We get that question a lot. And I think the other thing that I would say, especially in light of what you were asking for a lot of your listeners of, how do you deal with these challenges that you face? I think so often we solve one problem and everybody says, okay, now on to the next great thing. But the reality is that there's this never-ending cycle of challenges that you face. There's this never-ending cycle that, you solve one problem and then you do have to move to the next one. And so Kona was this very special, huge experience, but we don't always have to climb Mount Everest. We can still solve the little things that are happening here locally with our foundation. We can still focus on our relationships as brothers and go run in a local 5K that isn't on an island in Hawaii. So we're still racing. We're still enjoying everything we get to experience together as brothers, as friends, and as coworkers. And we're proud of what we get to do in all of those spaces.
Well, we are wishing you the very best in the Boston Marathon and looking forward to hearing about the incredible work that you guys are doing with the foundation. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing our story.
Thank you for joining us on this remarkable story of Kyle and Brent. Their journey reminds us that the greatest endurance isn't just physical. It's found in the way we give, care, and bring others along with us. For Kyle and Brent, the finish line is more than a personal victory. It's an open invitation for others to find their own path forward, to dream beyond limitations, to lift each other up, and to believe that no matter the obstacle, everyone deserves the chance to discover what their own possible looks like. My hope is that Kyle and Brent's courage move us all to lift each other higher, break down the barriers that hold us back, and keep pushing towards a world where every finish line is within reach for all. I'm Lindsay Smith. Thanks for checking out today's show. Remember to do your part to raise the line and strengthen our healthcare systems. We're all in this together.
If you like this podcast, please share it on your social channels. You can also subscribe to the series and check out all of our episodes at osmosis.org/raisethelinepodcast.